everyone. Welcome to another episode of Becoming. So excited to have you here. Thanks for being with us through this journey. As mentioned before, we're basically talking about the journey through medical school. I'm Juliana. I am currently a fifth-year surgery resident at Abrazo Health Network. And basically, I'm talking about my journey through medical school, basically giving tips, helpful advice, and just kind of interesting stories along the way through my journey to hopefully help the next person coming up who wants to go to medical school, so they don't feel as confused, as lost, as troubled as I was through my journey through the whole process. So last time we kind of talked about the application to medical school. The main things we talked about through that time, the main things we look at through the application, we look at grades, obviously we look at the MCAT. We look at research, we look at shadowing experience, and we also look at volunteer work. Those are the five main things. You want to make your application strong, want to make your application good. Those are the five main things you need to look at to make a good application for medical school. One of the things we also talked about was that you don't necessarily have to be a science major when you go to college, but the main thing is you have to get through your pre-med requirements and make sure you do well on that. Also, advice I would say through college, one of the things that looking back, I neglected to do was to join a medical association. So every medical association, be it the American Women's Medical Association, the American Medical Association itself, I know the American Surgical Application, it's ACS, the American Surgical Society, we all have pre-med divisions of this. One of the things I advise anyone, if your school has a chapter, if they don't have a chapter, if you can start a chapter, that's just amazing. Join the chapter in your school, the pre-med chapter in your school, because one of the things too that helps your application is people just knowing your name, right? If you work with the president of the American Medical Association and you happen to be, let's say, secretary, and you go to a meeting and you meet all these people who themselves tend to be on the administration board and tend to be on the application board of their medical schools, they know you. So then they can say, hey, no, I know that name. When they look at the application, that person happened to be treasurer of the, Houston chapter of the American Medical Association. And that goes a long way. And it's something simple. Just go to club meetings. Most of them, they have free food. So that was, a thing that we do to bring people in. So those are kind of things from college to medical school. Now we talk about, now you're in medical school. Congratulations, you're on your way to being a doctor. The way most medical schools are structured, you have your clinical years, you have your preclinical years, which is your didactic education, you have your clinical years. A few medical schools kind of do it differently. For the most part, those are how medical schools work. So your preclinical years, what is that all about? It's pretty much college in 2 years, right? Everything that you spent 4 years learning and doing, it's now compressed into 2 years. You go over your sciences, immunology, histology, pathology. That's when you learn all of these things, especially disease processes, everything, and that's when you learn all of that. A lot of it is didactic education again, so basically the way you did it in college, you go to class, you attend a lecture, you take tests, you do that. I went to Medical College of Georgia, like I mentioned before. We're stationed in Augusta, Georgia, home of the Masters. Go Golf. And basically how the whole process worked for us was that we would take tests. We were structured into organ systems. So, head and neck, pulmonary, which is the lungs, cardiac, which is the heart, and did all of that. And we took tests every week, and then we had a big test at the end of it. And then everything was then broken down into the different sections. So we did anatomy, we did physiology, we did histology, immunology, all of that kind of came together. So that by the time you got into your clinicals, you basically understood disease processes, you understood anatomy, you understood medications. So you did pharmacology as well, everything was there for you. Tips to success during your preclinical years. 2 tests you have to kind of take in that time. There's step 1 and step 2. So step 1, you usually take it between your second year and your third year. So your preclinical year is your first and second year. So second to third year, you take step 1. I would say start studying for step 1 from the get-go. That was a mistake that I made, and some of my classmates were studying. And I thought it was a bit silly, right, we're going to take this exam second year. Why are you guys studying now? Advice I would give anyone is get a review book. First Aid is the book that everyone uses. I still have my First Aid from when I was in medical school, and sometimes I still go through it. And as you go through each section in school, each class, just annotate your First Aid book, right? All these notes are notes that pertain to you. And to me, I think that's success for any major exam that you take at the end of, at the end of learning, be it pharmacy school, be it for residency, whatever. Get your review book and annotate it, to add pictures, do whatever you want to do, so that when it comes to second year, now is not the time to go reread the book, to go do everything. You already have this book, it's fully annotated for you. All you need to do is review all the information that you've had from the get-go. The other thing I would say is you still have homework, just like you did in college, just like you did then, except the time to do it is compressed, right? So I would say for me, I had very poor studying habits, right? I am and blessed that I was one of those people where, as far as I studied the night before for an exam, I would be just fine. And I got to medical school and that studying habit just didn't work, right? I had to relearn how to study. So my first few months in medical school, I really, really struggled because I was used to the cram, especially science majors, right? As far as you crammed the night before the exam, you had 2 exams a year. So as far as I crammed for my midterm and I crammed for my final, I could graduate with like a 95 in my class. In medical school, that didn't work anymore. I had to relearn how to study, had to relearn how to do all of that. So now I just teach people, I'm like, start building these study habits now, right? Don't be a crammer like me, because later on in life, you're going to hate yourself for it and you're going to have to relearn. So just chip at it, learn how to, do a little bit every day. I go home after class, I'm going to sit down, read for a little bit, study, do a few questions, annotate my review book, and move forward. Other things, once again, we have to talk about it. Research and volunteer hours. Those two things still become super important, even more important now in medical school. In preclinical years, my medical school, we had student-run clinics. And so, I was able to volunteer at those, even as a first year or as a second year. It was great. I wasn't allowed to see patients, but I was allowed to help with the whole process, so that when I finally got into my clinical years, all of it wasn't new for me. So if your school has things like that, take advantage of it. Once again, shadowing becomes very important. And now let's say you decide what you want to do, right, in your future. You're like, I'm thinking I want to be a surgeon, or I'm thinking I want to be a family practice doctor. Well, guess what? You're in medical school. They have all of those people there. Go talk to them like, hey, I'm so-and-so and I really like to do surgery. Is it okay if I just come and watch? Or is it okay if I do research with you? Do you have a paper that needs writing? Those are all these things that you start building your application, and you can't waste those preclinical years. Most medical school, you're between your first and second year, you have a summer, and that's your last summer ever, right? I hate to break it to you, that's going to be the last summer you will ever have. So enjoy that summer. Most of my colleagues chose to do research with that summer. I took that summer half and half. So first part of the summer, I actually volunteered. My school had a program for high school students, so I volunteered with that as one of the coordinators and one of the teachers in that program. Which is something they still ask me about on my application till date. I'll kind of talk about how we circled back to that program. I'll talk about it in a different episode, but that program still, even as a resident, is still working for me, and it's still doing stuff. So don't waste that summer. Even though it's your last summer, don't waste it. What one of my other friends did, they had a mission trip in Peru, and she traveled to Peru, right, as part of our school program. And so she got to go to Peru, got to travel around, tour, do all of these things. So still take advantage of that summer. Do what you need to do, but at the same time, that's time to build your resume as well. Don't forget to study. Don't forget to get your shadowing. Don't forget to get your research, and don't forget to get your volunteer hours. And with God being your strength, God willing, you make it through your preclinical years. You're so excited, and finally, it's time to go to the hospital, and time to you get your short white coat and time to walk around and okay, I'm learning how to be a real doctor. And we'll kind of talk about rotations, and we'll talk about that in the next episode. So I look forward to seeing you guys then, and I'll meet you later.